The cargo hold of the Varath's pride reeked of despair and unwashed bodies. Mira Lockwood sat in the corner, her back against the cold metal wall, with little Rocky curled up in her lap. The Veluvian cub's soft purring vibrated against her chest as he slept, blissfully unaware of the nightmare surrounding them. His tiny hands clutched at her torn jacket, and his downy fur, silver blue like moonlight on water, rose and fell with each peaceful breath. Mira's jaw was tight. Her knuckles were split and bruised from the beating she'd taken when they captured her 3 cycles ago. But she didn't care about her injuries. All that mattered was the sleeping bundle in her arms. The slavers had made a mistake taking her. They'd made an even bigger mistake taking Rocky. The heavy door hissed open, and Mira's eyes snapped up. Grelvax, the slaver captain, ducked through the entrance. He was a Corthian, 8 feet of scaled muscle and cruelty, with 4 arms that ended in claws designed for rending flesh. His species had been raiding the outer colonies for decades, taking whoever they pleased and selling them to the highest bidder. Behind him, 2 guards stood with shock prods at the ready. Grelvax's reptilian eyes scanned the prisoners until they settled on Mira and Rocky. A thin smile spread across his snout, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "The human and her pet," he hissed in broken galactic common. Mira said nothing. She adjusted her grip on Rocky, feeling his warmth, his trust. The cub stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Grelvax approached, his heavy footfalls echoing through the hold. The other prisoners pressed themselves against the walls, desperate to avoid his attention. He stopped in front of Mira, towering over her. "Stand up, human. Bring cub." "No." The word came out flat, emotionless. Mira didn't move. Grelvax's smile widened. "You think you have choice?" He reached down with one of his massive clawed hands and grabbed the thin chain attached to the collar around Rocky's neck. The collar they'd forced on him when they'd taken him from his dying mother. Mira felt the chain go taut, felt Rocky's body shift as the collar tightened against his throat. Something cold and ancient woke up inside her. "Let go." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a threat that transcended language. Grelvax laughed, a wet, rasping sound. He yanked the chain harder. Rocky whimpered in his sleep, his small hands tightening on Mira's jacket. The other prisoners would later say they'd never seen a human move that fast. Mira's hand shot up and grabbed Grelvax's wrist with a grip that made the Corthian's eyes widen in shock. She moved with him as he tried to pull away, rising to her feet in one fluid motion. Rocky remained cradled safely in her other arm, still asleep despite the jostling. "I said," Mira growled. "Let go." Grelvax snarled and swung at her with his other 3 arms. Mira twisted, absorbing the first blow on her shoulder while simultaneously stepping inside his reach. Her free hand shot forward, not with a punch, but with fingers extended like a spear. They struck the soft spot just below his primary sternum with surgical precision. The slaver captain gasped, his eyes bulging. He tried to bring his shock prod to bear, but Mira was already moving. She pivoted on her heel, using his own momentum against him, and drove her elbow into the cluster of nerve ganglia on the side of his neck. The guards started forward, but they were too slow. They'd been trained to deal with desperate, starving prisoners. They hadn't been trained to deal with a human mother protecting her young, because that's what Rocky was to Mira now. Not her species, not her blood, but hers nonetheless. Mira's movements were economy itself, no wasted motion, no hesitation. She'd been a soldier once, before she'd tried to leave that life behind, before she'd found herself on a colony world, working as a medic, trying to heal instead of hurt. But soldiers never really stop being soldiers. The skills just go dormant. Grelvax made a gurgling sound as Mira's hand found the base of his skull. The Corthian nervous system was different from humans, but she'd studied xenobiology extensively. She knew exactly where to apply pressure, exactly how much force was needed. She thought of Rocky's mother, bleeding out in the ruins of her village, begging Mira to save her cub with her last breath. She thought of Rocky's innocent trust, the way he'd stopped crying only when Mira held him. She thought of every slave these monsters had taken, every life they'd destroyed. Her grip tightened, one precise, terrible motion, The sound was wet and final. Grelvax dropped like a puppet with cut strings, his massive body hitting the deck with a thunderous crash that echoed through the hold. The chain fell from his limp claws. The guard stood frozen, shock prods raised but unused. They stared at their captain's body, at the human woman standing over him with a sleeping cub in her arms and death in her eyes. Mira looked at them, just looked. They ran. The door hissed shut behind them, and alarm klaxons began to wail. Mira knew she had minutes, maybe less, before more guards arrived. The other prisoners were staring at her with a mixture of terror and hope. She gently removed the collar from Rocky's neck and tossed it aside. The cub yawned, stretched, and nuzzled deeper into her arms without ever opening his eyes. Mira allowed herself the ghost of a smile. "That's right, little one. You just keep sleeping. I've got this." She looked at the other prisoners. "Anyone here know how to fly a ship?" A Torellian in the corner raised a tentative appendage. "Good," Mira said. "Because we're taking this one, and then we're going hunting for every slaver ship in this sector." She looked down at the body of Grelvax one more time. Humans, she knew, had a reputation in the galaxy. They were considered soft, emotional, weak, because they formed attachments so easily. The slavers had learned tonight what the rest of the galaxy would eventually understand. Humans weren't weak because they loved fiercely. They were terrifying because of it. Rocky purred contentedly in her arms, dreaming of safety and warmth, never knowing how close danger had come. And Mira Lockwood, former soldier turned medic turned liberator, carried him toward the bridge and freedom, leaving only a warning in her wake.